Thank you so much. Yes, Dr. Islam. Sir, I can hear you clearly. Am I audible to you clearly?
Yes, ma'am, you are very much audible and you are also visible.
All right,
So,
all right.
please carry on.
Sure, I'll be sharing my screen in a meanwhile, but before that, I'll just give a background, a few things. So
Yes,
I'll
please.
let you know when I sorry. Do you want me to share that immediately?
No, 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 ma'am, you also can do it from your end.
All
That
right,
will
all right.
be,
Okay,
yes,
I'll do that.
keep up the movie.
Sure, I'll do that. I'll do that. All right. So, a very good afternoon to all of you. And firstly, to begin with, it's an honor and pleasure to hear all the co panelists here. It was really enlightening. And just very quickly, I would also like to congratulate the organizing team and committee of Ghazal Mahavidyalaya for organizing such an international good conference. And personally, I would really like to thank Dr. Islam, Dr. Sarkar, and Dr. Biswas, who made this whole process very smooth and lucid for me, so that I can join from here. So yes, so coming back to my topic, I will also be talking about marginalization. But here I'll try to connect it with the first speaker, Dr. Tanveer Arshad. So Dr. Arshad was trying more, or moreover, he was trying to give a theoretical perspective. So on the basis of his theoretical perspective, I'll try to give an explanation regarding the creation of the state of Uttarakhand. So for example, just give me a sec, I'll just share my screen once. Okay. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
All right. All right. So, to begin with, I am trying to contextualize, or rather, I'm trying to explain or use the meaning of marginalization as a reason behind the creation of the state of Uttarakhand. So, in a way, I'm trying to contextualize the idea of marginalization through this case study, through an example. So, for example, if you want to locate my presentation today, so you can say that I am using Uttarakhand as an example to what Dr. Arshad tried to say, or was trying to say. So likewise, Dr. Roy or Professor Roy used Bengal example. So here I am using the example of the creation of a state. So likewise, moving on, as far as the meaning, so by now everybody, they have a good amount of idea as to what marginalization would mean. So it's an acute and persistent disadvantage which is rooted in the underlying social inequalities. So it definitely means that, or it represents the efforts when you push a group or individuals to the side or to the edge, and sometimes over the edge, so they are very easy to compromise, and also, terms like subordination, oppression, and exclusion, they all come under this idea of marginalization. So, although everybody, and we do agree that there is a lack of consensus as far as what the exact definition of marginalization is, but of course, we have different opinion, different perspectives on it. So, for example, we have demographic marginalization. So, when we say demographic marginalization, it means where, for example, the ethnic or the cultural underrepresentation. In those cases, we call them as demographic marginalization. When it comes to immigrant marginalization, it means, so for example, when people migrate, leave their places of origin, and when they leave their host culture and when they go to some different places, it is called immigrant marginalization. And for example, we have academic marginalization as well. So what happens in academic marginalization? So sometimes economic factors, they have an impact on a student. So these are some sorts of marginalization that we can easily witness and see in our societies. Apart from that, we do have subcategories or marginalized categories as well within the groups mentioned here. So, all in all, we are trying to say that any category or group or individuals, those are more prone and vulnerable to problem. They are the marginalized category. Um, yeah. So further, marginalization, if you really want to further understand it, we say that marginalization is multidimensional. When we say multidimensional, it means that it is an interplay of various forms or social forms that exist in society. We say this is dynamic. By dynamic, every location, every region, they have their specific conditions, right? So what is happening here is different from a different location. Am I not audible? Am I not audible? Dr. Islam? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hear me, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, all right. I'll share again. It's okay. Shall I continue?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, shall I continue?
Please continue, ma'am.
Okay, okay, okay. So when we say marginalization, it means multidimensional. So it's an interplay of various factors, social forms. Dynamic, why? Because every region they have a specific context. So what is true in Uttarakhand will not be true for Bihar, will not be true for Bangladesh. So every region they have a context, right? Then it's a diverse web of processes, which means there will be discrimination, exclusion, subordination. So all things, it's a web. Rooted in imbalance would mean that disproportionately allocation of resources or the allocation of privileges or the means of livelihoods, they are not proportionately distributed. And then they are systematically directed towards specific groups and individuals. This is what marginalization overall means. So, in short, what we are trying to say here is that marginalization, or the category that is witnessing marginalization, they have relatively little control over their lives, and the resources that are available to them, they are also limited. So, social phenomena by which a minority or a subgroup is excluded and their needs or desires are ignored. So you can see this in terms of linguistic basis or customs or religion, economic status, social status, etc. So in all these spheres, you can see the concept or the idea of marginalization which is at play. Now, why again we are saying that this is dynamic? So again, it is context specific. So whenever you want to analyze a situation, don't start with a preconceived marginalized category. Instead, focus on a category experiencing marginalization. That ways you will be able to get the main symptoms and the different symptoms more accurately. Secondly, because marginalization has probabilistic and not deterministic implications in development, means that, for example, if we take the case in take for example, in case of development, what happens is we think that there will be an increase in terms of positive outcomes, and in contrast what happens is it leads or it increases the likelihood of negative outcomes, and especially for the marginalized category. So although marginalization as a concept is a constant persistent concept, but as far as the experiences of marginalized category is concerned, it depends and it varies from situation to situations. So here I'm trying to give you a background or historical background about the formation of the state of Uttarakhand, and to situate the Uttarakhand movement in the larger issue of development and economic backwardness that is contributing to the problem of migration in today's context. And this idea, it is rooted in the idea of marginalization, or this issue is rooted in the idea of marginalization. So at the time of independence, the government, the state, groups, everybody knew that India is a diversified society. Groups were not homogeneous at all. So while political mobilization, they were trying to unite communities with common interest, but developmental policies since independence, they have invariably disaggregated them. And it reinforced the internal division and diversities within community. So it's, or in simple words, if you want to understand, what I'm trying to say here is development in a selective model or a selective mode of development, where minority communities needed assurance that they would be equal partners in the emerging democracy and they will enjoy their cultural way of life. But members of these communities, they always had the development related concerns. So, keeping all these things in mind, at least the state, they try to abolish untouchability. For example, opening of all common public spaces, reservations were also introduced. So, policy wise or similar policies, they targeted groups that were socially and economically deprived. Okay. But what happens in reality, what happens is, so for example, in case of Uttarakhand, so to give you a background, Uttarakhand, of course, separate statehood was granted in 2000, but before that, Uttarakhand was part of Uttar Pradesh. Now, Uttar Pradesh has a very different terrain as in comparison to the hilly region of Uttarakhand. When Uttarakhand was part of Uttar Pradesh, the role of demography and democratic politics in the political mobilization of marginalized group led to the creation of state of Uttarakhand. So because of different topography, the hilly population, they felt left out. They thought that the developmental initiatives or the developmental social policies that are coming for the state when they were part of UP, they were not going towards the hilly region. So it becomes important to argue here that even having a common state, so UP was part of Uttar Pradesh at that time, so even when it was a common state, they thought it will be a bedrock of social life and individual experiences. But democratic politics, it gave new alignments, it created new boundaries of differences, and occasionally over hesitant new identities brought new boundaries in terms of development. So, for example, environmental degradation is the first thing that the hilly region witnessed. So, like Professor Roy also mentioned, that British, they exploited those tea gardens in West Bengal. So the same thing happened in case of the hilly region of Uttarakhand as well. So the movement or the Uttarakhand movement largely was about safeguarding their right to safeguard the forest. Okay, so demands initially, they were not very clear on part of the Uttarakhandi people, and government also took an hypocritical stance. They banned, so for example, government banned the traditional rights of the villagers. They no longer can use their village common lands. Initially they used to, but now in under the developmental umbrella, they were deprived of their conventional rights on forest. And the state, at the same time, it allowed unlimited felling of trees by the contractor. So it was largely the mafia politics bureaucracy nexus which was at play. So it resulted in depletion of natural resources. It resulted in defacement of the hills to create leisure spots for the affluent or the new rich from the metropolis. Likewise, unscientific mining was also there, deforestation, liquor, forest mafia, etc. All these concerns, they were posing a major ecological challenges as far as the hill population were witnessing. Then, apart from this economic degradation, environmental degradation, economic backwardness was another reason that pushed the Uttarakhandi people to protest or to go towards the movement path. So, economic explanation of Uttarakhand upsurge has proved that apart from linguistic minorities, it also has identities based on economic and social neglect. So, due to lack of autonomous political space, the region, especially the hilly region, when it was a part of UP, it could witness the backwash effects of the capitalist development. So, the rest of the places of Uttar Pradesh were developing, but these hilly regions were not developing. So it is in this context that Uttarakhand movement can be seen as a protest against the national model of development. Economy is not the only factor that could explain the regional assertion. It was also about control over one's own resources. So Uttarakhand is often labeled as a colony within the state. So, for example, like Dr. Arshad, he said that he was referring to the global model of capitalist model where the developed world is exploiting the underdeveloped world, okay, the self and the other. So that thing was happening within the state of Uttarakhand. So within the state of Uttar Pradesh. So Uttarakhand was often labeled as a colony within a state, and it has been an internal colony exploited for and by outsiders. Despite the region being a part of a bigger state of UP, for its administrative procedure, economic, and other areas, the region remained different with no advantages. So, economic backwardness due to historical, ecological, political, administrative differences, the region always witnessed. So, this neglect, this marginalized status that the hilly region was experiencing, It continued even post independence era, along with problems of communication, geographical, and all these backwardness, the region, the hilly region was witnessing. Thus, this can be said that agriculture could not sustain and the industries have been non existent in the new model of development that the hill region was experiencing. So all this uncomfortable challenges that the hilly people were witnessing or experiencing, it led to the demand for a separate state. So as far as the Uttarakhand movement is concerned, it is a socio-cultural dynamic of the region which was different from the plain. Then the geographical, historical, etc., and the developmental experiences, they explain the character and identity of the movement, that why this Uttarakhand movement is different from rest of the movement, or the problems or the challenges that the state was witnessing from the rest part of the India. So it contributed to the process of, or it is due to the internal colonialism that the hilly region was witnessing, which contributed to the widening of democracy deficit that further led to mobilization of masses that were demanding a common identity for themselves. So, this common restlessness, this common uneasiness contributed to a shared understanding and experiences, threats, and opportunities. Such commonality of existence and perceptions gradually merged into the larger narrative that defined the Uttarakhand identity. So, initially, they did not have an identity of Uttarakhand as such, but because of the backwardness, because of the challenges, because of their marginalized status that the people of the hill region were witnessing, all those pushed them towards framing or the formation of their identity, which was Uttarakhand. So this explains the extent of movement and its claim over a territory for an autonomous political space. So if you want to have clues about the nature of this Uttarakhand movement, this can be found in the neglect of that hilly region after independence. So, this Uttarakhand movement needs to be located well within the domain of polity and within the context of struggle for power. The people of the region were made aspirational about statehood and were made to believe that their local conditions would improve upon state formation. So, role of state policy instruments, its impact on the region, in view of the hill's politically marginalized status, is of crucial socio-economic importance while analyzing the Uttarakhand movement. So, the demand of for separate state, it reflected the efforts on part of people to do away with, with its politically marginalized status. So, they directly demanded their due in the political power sharing. This was because they could see the insensitivity in policy packages at the state level for the hilly region. And that is why they were not demanding representation, but rather they were demanding the region based decision making mechanism. They wanted somebody to take decisions on for them. So for example, they have the hilly, because it's an hilly region, their needs would be different. So they wanted a mechanism that could table their concerns. So autonomous political space, it gained majority and the interest of region could be suitably reflected in the processes of policy formulation and policy implementation. So largely it was relative deprivation of the hill region that pushed or that led to the statehood movement. By relative deprivation, we mean that there was a discrepancy or difference between expectations and perceived capabilities involving economic conditions, political power, and social status. So when it comes to statehood movement or the Uttarakhand statehood movement, we cannot say that it is only due to one incident, but rather there is a sequence of events that push towards the Uttarakhand movement and that resulted into its creation of the state. So this after even the creation of this state, the selective attention, even within the state of Uttarakhand, is still evident and still exists. Still, the plain region are focused more in terms of development, and the hilly region, they are still left behind. So, in the hilly region, there are no jobs, there are no means of livelihood. Before separation, the hill districts also figured among the most undeveloped districts of UP, and the challenges caused by the Himalayan topography led to neither urbanization nor industrialization. So, which means that the hilly region needs something different. A policy which is good for plains can't be implemented in the hills as well. So, since there are no jobs in the hill, people left with no choice but to migrate in search of jobs and livelihood. So, because it's selective development, the hill regions, they are not developing, people, they are left with no choice but to migrate. So a large proportion of rural population is dependent on remittances. Is what? When you send money back home. So adaptation of western model of development, or what happens in this model of development, is backward regions, both at the national and global levels, they serve as colonies. They serve as a source of raw materials for the developed ones. So the new elites of the country emulated the West and treated the undeveloped and resourceless region of Uttarakhand in the same manner as the developed country treated the less developed ones. So migration in today's context is has become a great concern as far as Uttarakhand is for the hilly region of Uttarakhand especially. So migration is an important socio-political and cultural phenomena in India. The northern states, particularly UP, Bihar, and Uttarakhand, are places where out migration is more prevalent. Among these, the presence of migration in Uttarakhand is from distance past due to the amalgamation of various factors at different times in its history. Uttarakhand is ranked one of the top states for rural out migration. And that is why we term the economy of Uttarakhand as a money order economy. The deprivation in the region therefore has not merely been relative but also absolute to a great extent. The entire hill region has remained industrially backward with lack of employment opportunities, little investment with continuing destruction of natural resources. Industrial sectors forced large number of people to migrate to the plains. This backwardness of the hilly region gave rise to migration from the hills to plain. This became so pervasive that the Uttarakhand economy began to be known as the money order economy. So this whole thing, or this whole issue of migration and money order economy, has come up why, or due to the status of the marginalized status that Uttarakhand is witnessing. So, the role of the state is to realize that people cannot be excluded from the processes of development. If the Indian state is continue to do, if the Indian state continues to do so, it will pose a challenge since it would further lead to demands for sub-state autonomy from rest of the part of India as well. The most popular explanation available for demanding statehood was of course of economic backwardness and developmental neglect due to marginalization. And the similar core periphery model is applicable within the state of Uttarakhand as well. So there is skewed patterns of development, few regions benefiting, distorted ecologically and economic profile, still the state witnesses. So this created interregional and socio-economic disparities with few islands of prosperity and plenty in the hills. So the development agenda of the hill region fails to take into account the real needs and problems. And when you don't focus on the real needs and problems, of course, that category that you are not focusing on becomes a marginalized one. Neither a commitment to strengthen the traditional agro-pastoral economy nor towards preserving the fragile ecosystem could be seen. The limited gains achieved have by far been outweighed by the cost paid in terms of injury to nature, the decline of peasantry, and their subsistence and life supporting systems. So, poor development of the hills, increasing unemployment, etc., became precursors that contributed to the Uttarakhand movement and thereby the creation of the state. So, in conclusion, the Uttarakhand movement has been an expression of discontent arising out of interregional socio-economic inequalities and was marked by unusual spontaneity and massive support base. It was against socio-economic exploitation of the region and misleading marginalization of the region in terms of an unplanned industrial development model that the state was implementing or forcing it to have. In a way, the dynamics of democracy and development place the discourse of Uttarakhand identity well within the boundaries of polity, policy, and the state. So when Uttarakhand was part of UP, people had aspirations that they thought that they will also develop, but what was experienced was distrust. It was assured that its identity would be preserved and cherished, but the hill witnessed a discriminating attitude from the government. So what UK witnessed at that time, or what it is witnessing today, it is development of underdevelopment. It started by the entering of market and commercial interest, and it resulted in the rapid social change, disintegration of primordial social networks and giving rise to outmigration. And even after 25 years of its creation, the state couldn't even arrest the problem of migration. And it has resulted in the emergence of ghost villages. So by ghost villages, what do we mean? Ghost villages means when the abandoned villages, when the people they migrate with their families. So this phenomena continues to exist even after the creation of the state, and migration has not been reduced. Migration has become a societal reality that's in a way point towards the marginalized status the state still witnessing. With this, I end my presentation here. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for your time.